te blague. Give it up.
And now, our feature presentation.
This is episode 20 of the Florida Sound Archive podcast. I'm Jeff Kaiser. My guest for August 2021 is someone that many of you may be familiar with because he has spent many years booking shows and marketing at Respectables in West Palm Beach. He also hosted a pirate radio show in the 90s all the way up through the early 2000s called Resident Noize. And he's been in a number of bands throughout the years as well. And of course, well known for the honeycomb.com and now also PureHoney Magazine. We've got on with us Steev Rullman. Steve, welcome onto the podcast.
Hello, Jeff. How are you?
I am well. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. Well, it's great to have you on because you got a lot going on. You're a busy man, are you not?
I got a busy life because I'm trying to figure out what to do next. I've been doing this too long.
Too long, as in like 30 years, right?
Almost 30 years. Yeah.
Yeah, 30 years.
It's time to maybe shift gears and do something a little bit different.
You've got a 10-year anniversary coming up, right? For PureHoney?
Yeah, it's the 10-year anniversary of PureHoney, and we're going to do Bumblefest coming up on September 17th with about 20 bands downtown West Palm Beach. It'll be the 5th Bumblefest we've done.
How's that been for you? Because you've been involved in booking shows and doing that for so long. So how's that impacted you these last year and a half, 2 years?
My savings is depleted, and it's time to look for a real job. But it was a nice break. Like after so many years of doing what I've been doing, I really honestly was happy to just step away and not do anything for a while.
I'm not thinking about that. I know, what would you be doing? Like if this wasn't your full-time gig, like what would you be doing if you weren't doing this?
I've got a list somewhere. I just need to find it. I mean, I'm thinking about maybe like becoming a beekeeper, honestly. Like just take care of some bees and sell some honey, do a couple shows here and there, keep publishing the magazine, and maybe go on the road and just travel for a little while.
Has that kind of been something that you've been fascinated with or just interested in when it comes to just bees and that type of thing? Because kind of going back to the earlier years when you first started the honeycomb.com in the late 90s and then PureHoney, Bumblefest. So there's definitely that theme when it comes to bees and such. So where'd that kind of come from?
I don't know. I mean, I know that the name The Honeycomb came from because the Buzz radio station was popular at the time. And although they didn't care for me too much, I figured at least I'd extend an olive branch and maybe we could do some stuff down the road. Maybe they'd give me my own show at some point. And but I think historically, like I was in a fashion show when I was a kid and they put me in a beekeeper suit. So I'm sauntering down the runway as a beekeeper. And then there was a guy that I guess I borrowed the suit from, he was in his 80s and he kept bees. And he had this old black truck and it had a giant bee on top. And it's, I don't know, stuck in my head, I guess. He's a nice guy. I want to be like him.
Well, you kept the theme going, over the years, and it's kind of remained here with you. And as you kind of think back to, the early, and we'll get to all kinds of topics in this interview, but you kind of think about the early years of the Honeycomb and where it all began for you. Kind of started off, it was almost like a way to check out new music and find out the latest shows. And that's kind of what I remember when I first saw the honeycomb.com. But for you, as the creator of that, talk about some of the early years of the Honeycomb and kind of where the idea came from to do that.
It goes way back. I mean, when I was 6 years old, I would watch the Jackson 5 on TV, and they would have a segment where they would play two songs. And every time they did that, I was highly critical as to why would they even play that song? It's total garbage. Or that song was great. That's the song right there. That's the hit. And so at 6 years old, I was doing that. And then I know in third grade, I bought my first 7-inch was New Kid in Town. And I fell in love with that song. And I wrote down the lyrics and I took it to class to share with the coolest kid in the class. I'm like, check this out, man. And he was just like not impressed at all. But from a very early age, I was trying to share music and things I discovered with people. So yeah, that's why I do what I do, I think.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of the things I remember when I first checked out the honeycomb.com were some bands that never heard of before, wasn't really familiar with. And I like trying
to find the weird stuff
right.
that stuff that's under the radar generally.
Yes. And that's something that you kind of helped to pioneer too in some ways when it came to your pirate radio show, Resident Noize, because that was something where, and I was too young when you were out in the early years of the show, but I remember later on hearing about it. So what was that like for you, as a host of that, and what gave you the idea to put out a pirate radio show?
I graduated from college with a marketing degree, and then I just didn't want to go into any kind of corporate suit job. I just couldn't do it. And at some point I decided I was going to go back to school for film up in Gainesville. I was going to get on the radio there. I registered for classes, came back, started a band, met Paige and Matt from Soundsplash, and they were starting the pirate radio thing. They invited me to jump in. So I started doing a radio show, started the band, and then there was something else that kept me here as well. I think my car got broken into and all my contacts that I had made, I don't know. Something had kept me here.
Can you share some of the in-studio guests that you had, and also a little bit more on some of the releases that you put out? Because there were some really good ones.
Before that actually happened, I put out, the first one was just pre-recorded stuff from a lot of the local bands that we were spinning on the air at that time. And this is that cassette: Drive Choir, Livid Kittens, Alpha Wave Movement, One Dog's Opinion, Chihuahuas, Drop, Wolf Daddies, Box, Superbuzz, a couple others as well. But yeah, that one came out in 1993. So that's right when I first started doing the radio. And then subsequently, years later, I broke off from doing the radio with Paige and Matt. And I did the Resident Noize thing at a different station. And the bands on that were Postface, Death on a Stick, Doomed Clowns, Creamy Electric Santa, Happy Accidents, Crumbs, Load, Radio Baghdad, Frankenfinger, Jack Off Jill, Backwash, Arthur's Chair, Lozall, Kevin Barnes, Drive Choir, and my band, the Unseelie Court. So we did that out of the studio. The bands actually came up to the studio in Lake Worth, and we set it up, taped it to ADAT, videotaped it, and it wound up being a double cassette release. And the cover is basically Fox 29 came in and videotaped, did a segment with us when we were taping Postface. So we were on the air for a few minutes, and I wish I had some video of that to share. It's out there somewhere.
Yeah. It's one thing I really liked about that release was the artwork. So who did the art, and who may have helped you kind of finance those releases?
Well, the financing of all of it was basically I would I would go around to a lot of local businesses and just say, hey, can I get, $50, $100? And surprisingly, I'd get, 10 to 20 people to give me a little bit of money, and that generally covered the cost of it. I'd put them in stores and stuff, and yeah, we'd sell some, but I'd never go back to the stores and collect. So basically the stores, kept the money and kept whatever cassettes were left over. It's too lazy to go back,
Are there any still left?
I've got a handful left, and this one especially I like this one because we did, there's Polaroids from the sessions.
Oh yeah.
So there's a little description of the bands with Polaroids.
That's
And
neat.
then the track listings, we threw them all up on like local businesses and alleys and stuff like that. Then in between each track, I stole some audio from some drug, something about marijuana and Donna Shalala and the way the DEA, the way they were tracking the whole drug war type thing. So I stole a lot of samples and dropped the samples in between each track just because I thought it was funny.
Nice.
And then there's some more Polaroids from that session.
Oh yeah.
But so I did the artwork for this one. I finally learned how to do Photoshop at that point in time. Actually, Chris Simon from Livid Kittens taught me how to do Photoshop. The other cassette that I showed you, that was done by this guy who did weird stuff. But look at that. I was just looking at the sponsors. You were asking about money. So yeah, Saturn Sound Studios.
Oh yeah.
1190.
Very
What's
cool.
that? Yellow Snow Design. I guess that was his design company. That's true.
That's neat.
Anyway,
Yeah, really takes you back a little bit looking through some of that.
I haven't listened to these in 20 or more years. Be interesting to go back and listen to them. Actually, I should get it digitized, along with all the other tracks that were on those recordings that didn't make it onto the cassettes.
I agree. I need a copy of both of those. Just putting that out there. And number two, it would be nice to be able to go to a YouTube or a Bandcamp and be able to stream at least some of those songs because they're hard to find. And music's meant to be heard, Steve, not stored.
It'd be funny to have that. Yeah, I agree. It'd be funny to have that up there. I'll see if I can make that happen one day. So that last one was like 1996. Then this one I did in 2001.
Okay, yeah, I remember. I used to have that, but I don't think I have it anymore. That was like a freebie, right?
They were pretty much all freebies, right? I mean, this one was once I started the Honeycomb, and I was involved with Closer Magazine. That's my grandfather on the cover. He's chilling. But yeah, this one had mostly Florida bands on it also, like Rocking Horse Winter, Pink Shovel, Groove Nicks, Mind Like Water, Remember the Ocean, Disconnect, Sea Venus, Legends of Rodeo, Baby Robots, Kite as a Victim, Breaking Spree, Young and the Useless, Betsy Ross, Whirl Away, Plutonium Pie, and then two bands from out of town were One Line Drawing and The Faint, 2001.
And speaking of some of those bands, I know for a fact, because I know I saw The Faint at Respectable Street.
You were at that show?
I was at that show.
We've been at a lot of the same shows. Huh?
I know. And I remember at that show, the lights had gone out. And at the time, I thought it was maybe a part of the whole show. But I don't know.
Yeah, that was pretty embarrassing from my side of it. Like the club just couldn't handle all the power. They brought in like these big heavy duty lights. They weren't definitely not LED back then. And the power went out a couple times at least. And, they've got all their samplers up there queued up. So it caused them a lot of distress. But it was a great show. I had just discovered them like a year before, and I went up to Orlando to see them and then over to Tampa the next day to see them, and met them over in a cafe, talked to them for a little while, and they said next time they came through, they'd book a show in West Palm, and they did. So it's cool.
Yeah, it was cool. And there were a lot of bands that you booked at Respectable Street and other places too. So what were some of your favorites that you brought in to play for the good people of South Florida?
At Respectable Street only, or just in general?
We can talk about Respectable Street and we can maybe go a little bit into some other places, whatever really comes out to you.
My favorites at Respectable Street would have been probably Album Leaf, The Faint, obviously. I used to book Dick Dale quite a bit. I think 3 or 4 times I booked him there, and I would go upstairs and settle with him every night. And I remember there was one show where we didn't do the numbers, and I was like, dude, can you help me out? I'm gonna get ream for this. And he actually took a slight cut to help me out. That's how cool he was about it. And a buddy of mine who's no longer with us, he used to shape a surfboard for each of those shows, and we would raffle it off. And we'd have Dick sign it, and we'd actually put it under the glass before it was raffled off. It'd be glass with his signature under it. And in fact, John from Top 5 Records in Lake Worth won one of those boards, and it's hanging up at the shop. Yeah, another story. I got when I got my first cell phone. I don't know how he got my number, but the very first phone call I ever received on it was from Dick Dale. I was sitting upstairs at Respectable Street, and phone rang. Hey, Steve, this is Dick. I'm like, Dick who? Dick Dale. I'm like, oh shit, this is cool. And it was weird, but memorable. I just enjoyed doing it. It was fun. I helped Jim Hayward from Slamming Productions a lot with some of his shows, just passing out flyers and doing my own stuff. And then through the radio show, I started doing pirate radio concerts. And I'd book the show and have the bands all play and pay them. And that's how I just fell into it. At some point, I decided I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. So I may as well be the guy that does what he can to help, stimulate the local scene. And I remember specifically thinking about that one day and just kind of like, I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. I guess I'll just do this. And I'm still doing it. And I guess I still haven't grown up yet either.
Yeah, so the Resident Noize definitely was something that went on for quite a long time. Were there any bands in that era, maybe late 80s, early to mid 90s that, really stood out to you? You would see them play gigs a lot and kind of followed them and maybe you became friendly with them over time?
Yeah, I mean, a lot, obviously. My favorites, I'd say my favorite bands from the 90s would be my number one favorite local band of all time is Postface. I can't even believe I just said that. I love Load, but Postface is my favorite band of all time. Creamy Electric Santa, Load, Landscaper, Freaks with Beaks, Livy Kittens, Backwash, Holy Terrors. From the 90s, those were some of my favorites. Drive Choir. I covered a lot of ground. I just don't know where I was, when I was. And
yeah.
It's weird thinking back. This whole process made me think back about stuff. And the moments that I remember the most were the times I was the most impaired. The most memorable moments of the 90s for me were times that I was not completely sober. And they made an impact on me. I remember those moments. You would think it'd be the opposite. Never did anything crazy. I wasn't doing the hard stuff like a lot of the local bands were doing.
Yeah.
That was never my thing.
And when you started playing music yourself, was your first band that you played with the Unseelie Court?
I played in a couple cover bands back in high school.
Okay.
You had Paige on last episode, and her favorite guitarist, Chris Simon. I was in a couple cover bands with him, and we would do, Bad Religion covers, and I can't even remember what we were covering back then, but I do remember doing some Bad Religion. That was like 1987, something like that. But we wrote some of our own stuff, but mostly we were just having fun. It wasn't like a real band. And the first real band was the Unseelie Court, yeah.
Were you singing in the first cover band that you were with, or were you playing another instrument?
Yeah, I didn't know how to play anything. I didn't play instruments. I was just, back then it was okay to just have a front man just be stupid on stage and not play anything.
Yeah.
And I just liked singing back then. So
Who were some singers or frontmen that you kind of looked at and were like, yeah, that's, maybe to emulate a little bit, or someone you just kind of, someone you're just a fan of?
I don't know that I ever emulated anyone. I think I just went on stage and did what I felt in the moment. I wasn't even on stage. I wasn't there. When I was on stage, I wasn't even there. And I loved watching Bobby Load, obviously. I think he kind of did the same thing. He just went for it. And yeah, it's probably the best front man.
What are some of your memories of Bobby Load? Did you have a chance to get to know him personally?
We had some conversations. The one that sticks out the most, I was driving. He was in the back seat. I think Bobby from Blanket and Game 4 and Death on a Stick, and what other band was he in? Anyway, I had a car full of people. I think it was my birthday, and for some reason I was driving. They were smoking something that was incredibly powerful. Anyway, Bobby had a cassette tape of his new record. He had just gotten back from New York or something. So he's like, hey, you guys got to listen to this. I got my new cassette tape. Can we listen to it? Yeah, put this in, man. And we put it in. And after every single song, he would stop. He's like, stop the tape. And then he would go on this 2-3 minute monologue telling us about what the song was about and how it came. This one's about this hooker I met in New York. And she was, and it just, if I had a tape recording of that car ride, it was priceless. That was amazing.
Those are the moments that usually don't get recorded,
It was the funniest I ever heard, man. It was incredible.
That's awesome.
Yeah. By the way, I think we were going to see the Flaming Lips at Sunrise Musical Theater, and they were opening for Candlebox. And I think it was that show. And again, it's my birthday, so I got pretty high going in. I heard music starting, and I just was like, I didn't know where our tickets were. I didn't know where anybody I came with was. I was just going down the front row, which you weren't allowed to do. And I just kind of tunnel visioned it straight to the front row. Made my way across some people and looked to my left, looked to my right, and it was all my people. We were all right there in the front row. So Flaming Lips were playing, and the whole room, you look back, all the Candlebox people were just sitting there like this, bored to tears. And there's like 20 of us in the front row. And then off to the side over there was the Living Kittens and all the people they came with. And us and them were the only people standing in the whole room, enjoying the show.
Wow.
That's when the Flaming Lips were actually cool. Back then, they were pretty cool. They kind of cheesed out over the years.
And you being an archivist too, were you bringing like a camcorder at all to a lot of the shows you were seeing? And do you maybe have some of that footage that you kept over the years?
Off to my left is a box of about 50 VHS tapes. Don't know what's on some of them. I would go tape all the shows.
Nice. Out of all the shows that you saw that stand out to you, is there one in particular that's like, it's like the one that you just think back on more often than maybe some of the others?
As far as taping it myself or just being there?
Being there.
Local show?
Any show. Maybe both. Local show and a national show.
Once again, Paige and I were in the front row at Lollapalooza at Bayfront Park. And Jesus and Mary Chain were playing in the afternoon. Lots of smoke and lights and heat. And I think she or somebody gave me some acid. And I barely made it through their set. It was amazing. So that one was good. There was this woman who put together a festival back in, I think, 91. It's called Livestock. And the first one was smaller. The second one was out in the woods, like serious out in the woods. And they put a big ass stage out there. And there was mud everywhere. It was raining. and Load played that show, and I have video of that over here on tape somewhere. And they let me be. I was on stage, taping that, and he's just rolling around on the stage, screaming, "You killed my dog!" And the pit was just a bunch of, pit bros doing their thing in the mud. That was pretty cool.
While you were going to all these shows, did you find yourself in the early years getting inspired to, someday want to put on your own shows and promote and market and that sort of thing? Did you find that was what was happening, or kind of what was that like for you?
It was kind of simultaneous. It was a simultaneous thing. Those livestock events were pretty comprehensive, bigger than anything that I was going to try to do. I was just trying to do some local shows and, bring some of the Miami, Fort Lauderdale bands up to West Palm.
And the West Palm Beach scene over the course of, I don't know, I guess what, 20 years has evolved a lot. You were there. I mean, you've been there the entire time. So what are some things that you've seen from the earlier years, maybe like the early mid 90s, to where things have grown over the years? How is it the same? How is it different?
I think South Florida in general is cyclical just because of the demographics, kids going away to college, the diverse populations, a lot of elderly people. And, I just think it's hard to sustain any sort of movement. So I feel like I've always said this, it just seems like it shifts and changes every 3 to 5 years. You have a whole new crop of things popping up. There's nothing that starts and becomes sustained over time. And when it comes to like what I've been doing with radio or magazines or bookings, I've seen a lot of people come and go. They'll start a website, they want to, share stuff about the scene, and they pop up and they disappear within a year or two, just
Right.
Because I don't think people realize how much work goes into it. And I think once they realize I got to get a real job and go do that. I wasn't smart. I wasn't smart enough to do that. With respect to the Palm Beach scene, it's really weird. Like for me anyway, the early 90s, I felt like the Broward scene was the strongest of the three. Aesthetically, they were also a lot more experimental, I thought. And, Miami was doing its thing as well, but I felt like Broward, Fort Lauderdale was doing something a little more weird and unique and special. And over the years, it's shifted. It's kind of like, it's almost inverted. There's not a lot happening in Fort Lauderdale these days. It's mostly Miami and then Palm Beach. And Palm Beach is, I don't think Palm Beach is as strong as it could be right now. COVID hasn't helped, obviously.
Right.
But 2015, 2016, there were some really cool things happening. 2007, 2008 also, there was some cool stuff happening then. And again, it's just every 3 to 5 years, really cool things start happening.
Yeah. Yeah, it's grown quite a lot over these years. There's no doubt about it. And was the first venue that you were booking for or doing promotion or marketing for, was that the Wormhole?
My own space, basically.
Yeah.
I think it was, yeah.
So when that first started, what was that like for you, kind of opening up, your own spot, for people to come and check out shows and hang out and stuff?
I had 3 partners. So we were supposed to share duties, and it wasn't just a venue. It was, we'd books, magazines, CDs, cassettes, album, vinyl, vintage clothing, candles, incense. It was kind of a hodgepodge of a lot of different things. So it was exciting. There were the 4 of us got together. We started to do this thing, and then, hopefully they don't see this, but I feel like I took on the bulk of it at some point, and especially when it comes to keeping the place a little bit respectable in the sense of not letting it turn into a total, it was dirty sometimes. It got really dirty. And I felt like they weren't holding up their end as far as helping keep the place clean, and let's not go there. But yeah, we had some cool times back then.
Yeah.
A lot of shows, a lot of all ages shows. And last weekend was upstairs, so you could pop upstairs for a drink, play some pool, play some video games, and then pop back down, watch the show. We were doing comedy nights, philosophy nights, a little bit of everything. It was a tiny space, and we probably had about 6 couches in there, so it was kind of like it's like a big little living room space. Almost every show it was just packed. So
yeah,
we would charge like $2 at the door, and give most of it to the bands. We were just trying to keep the doors open. We never did make money with that place. We were open for 2.5 years. And when we closed, the landlord raised the rent. He tripled it actually. And we had just started to like turn a profit after 2.5 years, and there was no way we could keep the doors open.
Yeah. One name that you also worked for that I used to see on ticket stubs was Phantasma Productions. You did some work with them, right? It wasn't maybe like a year or so. You did some work with them. Is that right?
Yeah, it's on my resume. I guess he saw what I had been doing with the Wormhole and the radio programs, and gave me a call one day and said, "Hey, you want to come, work for us? Let's have a meeting." And the thing is, I went there and I worked in the special events department. I wasn't really involved with the concert side of things, and all the ideas I had to like try to get locals on the bills, come on, put the local bands on the bills, have locals on the bill. Most of the time it just didn't go anywhere. And I spent a lot of time doodling and drawing, designing posters of my, just doing my own thing.
Yeah.
And and then during that time I was starting to book shows at Respectable Street. And when I left Phantasma, I actually started doing everything at Respectable Street, all the marketing, all the booking, built the first website, PR, and I did that for about 10 years.
Yeah. And that's one of the few venues that's still around from, that period, I feel like. How did that relationship start? How did you get involved with them in the first place?
I was just going there as a drunk kid, underage. And I remember going up to Rodney and I'd be like, "Hey man, I want to work here. I want to work here." And he's like, "Yeah, come back, talk to me when you're sober." And that happened like 2 or 3 times. And I finally realized that, he's probably serious. So, yeah, I just became friends. That was the place I went. We would head out at midnight, like 4 or 5 nights a week, and just dance for hours and hours and hours. And, of course, see shows from time to time too. 7 Seconds or whoever. Like 7 Seconds, I almost jumped in their van, but I decided I should finish college instead. They're like, "Yeah, come with us." I'm like, "Nah, I should have gone."
I mean, I guess you still can, right? I mean, they still play out, don't they?
Yeah, to this day, I probably couldn't be a proper guitar tech anyway. They were like, "Yeah, we'll teach you how to be a guitar tech." I'm like, "All right, I don't even know how to play guitar."
You promoted a lot of shows at Respectables, and out of all the shows that you promoted there, was there any bands that you maybe didn't get that you really tried, but for whatever reason it just didn't work out?
Yeah. The biggest disappointment was I actually did book them, but they canceled because I guess Anton had a freak out on tour. I think it was around 2002. I booked Brian Jonestown Massacre, and got canceled because he ended the tour halfway through. I don't know. That was disappointing.
They never rescheduled, I assume.
No.
One thing I liked about Respectables is it'd be a lot of different types of music that you could see there. So how much of that was your influence? Like, was that all your decision to try to spice it up and make it different, or?
Well, there's definitely a period where I was doing a lot of what I wanted to do, and you can only book what you know. So
Right.
I would focus on the stuff that I really wanted to book, and I would book stuff that I didn't really care for, but knew that it was something that would make the club money. Obviously, bring some people in. You have to do that. But I tried to focus on what I really liked and tried to like hone the aesthetic a little bit in that sense. But we also used outside promoters, you know, Jim Hayward, Slammy Productions, and whoever else back then, I don't even remember. But so they would, you know, they would do their all ages punk shows and stuff like that. And I would do at that period, I was more into the indie scene. American Analog Set, the album Leaf, Dismemberment Plan, Luna, Kala, Saturday Looks Good to Me, just name a few.
Sure. I know we're talking, you know, not necessarily about Florida bands per se, but one of the first, and maybe it was a solo performance before I ever heard of Montreal, but on the Resident Noize radio show, I think it was from the first times I heard Kevin Barnes and the of Montreal, and I'm pretty sure I saw them a couple times at Respectable.
Well, I mean, I did book them a few times, but Kevin actually, he was from West Palm Beach, and before he started at Montreal, he would hang out at the Wormhole, and he would come in and play a solo acoustic. He was great. We loved him. We were like, this kid's cool. He's doing some cool stuff. And I think I booked his first out of town show. I told him, you know, here, go play this show in Miami. I think it was the Hungry Sailor. And he came back up and he's like, I'm like, so how'd the show go? And he's like, yeah, they really didn't get what I was doing. I'm like, dude, don't worry about it. You got something special. Keep at it, whatever. You know, 2 years later, he moves to Athens and starts up Montreal. So.
And the rest is history there, because
he just went for it. Yeah.
Did you ever have any interest at managing acts or bands and that sort of thing?
I mean, I did unofficially. You know, there's no contract. I didn't get any money from it, but yeah, I managed. I helped a lot of bands with their marketing, with their bookings, with their production of cassettes, you know, CDs, T-shirts, whatever. I would handle all that for them. Pink Shovel, L, John Ralston, Invisible Music, Secret French Kissing Society, The Doers. I'm missing somebody, but I love doing that too. I just did it because I love doing it.
Yeah.
And so when I was helping out the Doers with some stuff, and they asked me to go on tour with them, opening for the Drums and Surfer Blood. I think that was October 2010. And we did a full month all the way from the West Coast to the East Coast, Portland to New York. Yeah. And, you know, at the age I'm almost twice their age at that point. And that was an experience. I should have written a short story about that tour because, I mean, I guess I was kind of like the band mom on some level, but somebody had to keep some things in place. And I do have some stories for that. I don't want to try to tell them right now, though.
Before we did the interview, actually, and we had chatted before, we talked about keeping journals of all the things that you've been doing over the years. And I know you mentioned that it was not something that you had done, but you wish you would have written it down because there was more to the story than probably what we can remember at this point.
I'd like to go back and catalog some stuff. The skeleton is probably still here, but I was talking to someone last night about keeping diaries also, and they were talking about how they love just getting rid of all their stuff and not having the weight of that. And I'm like, I would love to do that, but if I did that, I would never, I mean, basically all this crap sitting over here in boxes is my memory. Like when I pull stuff out of those boxes, it's like, oh, okay, I remember that now. And then it triggers other thoughts and memories. And without that's basically, I think, my diary in a physical sense. It's just not written down and it's not organized. Yeah.
Is there stuff that's close enough to maybe pull out something? And is there anything that's nearby, like maybe an old flyer or something you can just...
You told me to, like...
You could just maybe something that's close and accessible that you can kind of show and tell.
Are you familiar with The Independents, the band?
Yeah.
The Independents?
Yeah.
So they sent me, back when I did my radio show, they sent me a handmade cassette before they ever released anything. So this is the cassette that they sent me. And, you know, it's just...
That's awesome. That's super cool.
It's just pretty raw, you know. And
yeah, I mean, yeah.
I had a set kind of like this from Chris DeMix from Less Than Jake before they got picked up and signed as well. Yeah. But I don't know where that one is. this, don't tell Paige I have this, but because she can't have it.
Oh man, nice.
I'll not have it. That's mine.
Yeah, you heard on the last episode she was looking
Yeah.
for that tape. Yeah.
Here's the thing: if she gets this pressed on vinyl, I'll give her the cassette tape.
Okay.
That's the deal. I'll
That's
make
the
with
deal.
her.
That's
Yeah.
the deal. Yeah, I don't know how many of those were ever in circulation, but they're really hard. They're really hard to find.
Yeah, probably not a hell of a lot. This is kind of funny too. I pulled this. This is a box that I would carry with me to do my radio shows. And so this is the early cassette period when I was before CDs. And these are the cassettes that are still in that case from that time frame. And maybe you can see some of the bands. Recognize any of those?
Oh yeah. Yeah, you got some gems in there, Steve.
Skip Dane,
Yeah, that's nice.
So there's an archive. That's my strongest archive right there.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty strong. That's a nice collection, and that's just tapes. So what about in terms? Did you ever collect things like test pressings and like that sort of stuff too?
I wouldn't say I collected that, but I mean, Bob Slade. Remember Bob Slade's radio program on WVUM? I think it was called Off the Beaten Path. He was doing a show called Off the Beaten Path. I think it was on WVUM, and he managed Load back in that time frame. And anyway, he did a great radio show. I mean, that's also where I picked up I learned a lot as far, discovering music. His show was the first place I heard Nirvana, and when he rattled off when he did the back sell on who he had just spun, he flip-flopped Bullet La Volta and Nirvana. And the problem is I immediately went to Specs or whatever record shop and I bought Bullet La Volta, put it in. I'm like, this is not what I heard. Because, I heard that Nirvana song. I'm like, I need to hear that song again. That was amazing. So, so I had this crappy, Bullet La Volta was not very interesting to me. No.
They weren't Nirvana.
No.
Very far from it. But yeah, that is okay. What else we got there?
Yeah. Well, you were just saying like Bob sent this over to me when I was doing the radio. So it's a Load test pressing.
Yeah.
And then Roach Motel was also cool. There's a signed Roach Motel.
Yeah. Nice. Were you at that last Roach? And I think it was the last one that they did. The one at the it was in Palm Beach at the
Red Lion Pub.
Yeah, Red Lion. Yes, thank you. Yes, were you at that show?
Yeah, I was. How'd you know that?
Because I was at that show.
You were there?
I was there.
Really?
I was there. Yeah. I was there. Yeah, and I think that was the last time that was the only time I ever saw them play because I was obviously
That's
too
the
young.
only time I ever saw that.
Yeah, so that was a major check off the list right there.
Likewise, I saw that was coming. I'm like, I gotta go. And that place, like, what year was that? Do you remember?
Oh boy, it had to be early 2000s, 2002 maybe, 2003, 2004, somewhere in that time period. I want to say is when that happened.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like it was later.
I mean, if it was, that period is a bit of a blur, so I'd have to look it up, but it was definitely in the early 2000s. Definitely was, I think. Yeah.
I feel like it was maybe 2000. I don't know. See, I don't know. It doesn't matter. But
yeah,
that venue, my band used to play there back in 92, 93, 94.
Okay.
And oh my God, every story has acid in it, doesn't it? Or mushrooms. Damn. we would play that place, set up our strobe lights. You know how small it is, right?
Oh yeah.
And it'd just be you couldn't move through the place. And strobe lights, mushrooms, bunch of drunk Boynton locals, and it was sort of memorable. It was a time.
Yeah. So that's interesting. It's cool to hear that we were both at that show, and I just really appreciate some of the cool artifacts that you shared, and I think that's really awesome that you can and I agree with you. That type stuff helps to remember. When you started to do the actual physical copy of PureHoney Magazine, was that in a way maybe to help you too, like remember like what was going on at that, like during different times and that sort of thing?
No, I think that just kind of came because out of desperation. I didn't have a job. I started propaganda. I concepted that place, started it, got it rolling, and had major disagreements with the money guy and told him to fuck off, and walked away from it. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to grow that thing. I was there for about a little over a year and a half. We got best venue, 2 years in a row, new times, whatever. And we went on the tour with Surfer Blood and the Doers and drums, and they when I got back, I didn't know what I was going to do. So I was booking a few hodgepodge shows here and there, Respectable Street, Little Munich, Speakeasy. Eventually, I started doing some stuff at Propaganda again. I actually started bartending there too, just a little bit. But when I got back, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I'm like, I guess I was just sitting around the house getting really stoned. And I'm like, what if you open the magazine and there's a giant poster on the inside and the event listings were like right there and you could just click a quick, easy pickup. And I had a little bit of experience because I was music editor of Closer magazine from 2000 probably through 2008. I don't know. So I had a little experience with that. And I was just like, well, what if I just do a newsprint thing, try to keep it cheap, keep it simple and something for people to pick up quick and find out what's going on. And honestly, I credit that physical manifestation with keeping me doing, maybe I shouldn't credit. Because of that, I'm still doing this. I feel like the internet thing was just kind of like getting lame at that point. Everything's on the internet. And if I hadn't done that, I think I would have lost interest in doing the online version. To have the two working together, I think it just made more sense.
Yeah. Do you find that people are still like excited to pick up the physical copy of the magazine?
Some people, yeah. not everybody, of course,
Yeah.
But I mean, I do hear people say, like, I love picking it up. Like, I always can't wait to see what's in the magazine, what the poster's going to be. And
Right.
I have it hanging on my wall in my studio or my bedroom, this poster, that poster. I'm like, oh, cool, nice. I was getting a massage a couple weeks ago, and I don't know, we started talking about what I do and stuff. And she's like, oh, I have one of your posters on my wall. I'm like, oh, cool, nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Hopefully she did a good job.
Not bad. I'll go back.
There you go. And actually, I mean, the room that you're in right now would be perfect for. It seems like you got a nice, like, chill ambiance going on. You got the little flickering lamp behind you and the piano and the lava lamp.
Yeah. If I had a bar, it would be kind of like this. This would be the front room, and then the back room would be like a cave where you go up the dance. But yeah,
it's got a little speakeasy vibe going on back there.
If we can find the backdrop, I'll try one more time and open a small bar, but I'm completely on my own terms. I'll try one more time.
Do you play the piano at all?
That's funny. This is the piano I learned on as a kid. I never really did learn because my teacher was uninspiring, and she didn't connect anything in my brain to make it make sense. Why I'm doing all these scales and whatever. I subsequently picked up a free piano before I got this one. Now I have like 3 or 4 pianos, and I taught myself how to play again, just sitting down and every day having to walk past it. It's kind of like you walk past that thing you have to do pull-ups on in the doorway.
Yeah.
Like every day you walk past the piano, and all of a sudden you start playing, and it's pretty. I never thought I'd be able to play. Now I can. I'm not great. I don't shred, but I can do it. I can write a song.
Yeah, I was going to ask that question. So because obviously you still do music, yourself. And I know one of your,
not lately.
The Stardust Commission was like your solo project, right? So
yeah, That's my would-be solo vehicle. Yeah.
Did you find that you would maybe go to the piano and maybe just play a little bit and that kind of sparked the idea, or was that kind of not your process?
Oh, writing process, you mean?
Yeah.
Generally, it would start off on guitar.
Okay.
Strum some chords on guitar, or I'd just have some lyrics, and the lyrics just fit with whatever I come up with on guitar after that. But generally, it starts with. Actually, there was one time I was taking a girlfriend's poetry and putting it to music. I had to reconfigure a lot of her words to make them fit the song, and that was a fun process.
The vibe I get, and I don't, this is not in a bad way, but the vibe I get from listening to that project is it's kind of like real, like melancholy, kind of like a sad vibe. Is that kind of what?
That's me in a nutshell. Yeah, melancholy.
You capture it really well in the music, because it's that was the first thing that came to my mind as I started listening to some of the. You shared me some of the songs that I was streaming them, and I'm like, because I had not heard, I wasn't familiar with some of it before, and as I was listening to it, I was like, yeah, this is definitely, hey kitty, this is definitely a sad vibe going on. What's your cat's name?
This is Luna Mira.
Nice.
And check out the tail.
Oh hey, look at that.
It's like a paint.
Yeah, it is like a little paintbrush. Nice. Is that your only cat?
I had 2 cats from a relationship when we bought this house, and that ended, and I kept the cats. And then when I put my other little girl to sleep, a month later, this one showed up on my front porch and just crying. I'm like, come on in. So she came in and we hung out, and we got along pretty good. And then she had kittens in my closet one night.
Oh.
And that was fun too.
Did you wind up keeping any of them?
I almost kept one, but ended up giving all 4 away.
Okay. So the 10 years, right? 10 years you've been doing the PureHoney Magazine, looking down the kind of the future path here, do you think you'll be doing this 10 years ahead?
People have been asking me that a lot lately, and so I'm kind of, initially I just say, yeah, I'm gonna keep on doing this, but lately I'm starting, because I'm getting questioned on it, I'm like, well, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the last Bumblefest. Maybe 10 years roughly is the time to stop the magazine, but I don't think I'm gonna stop. Yeah, I'm gonna keep going for a little bit longer. If I can do it remotely, put on a few shows here and there, I'll keep doing it. As long as I enjoy doing it,
Right. So is there something that you think that maybe you haven't done that you want to do that you could do?
You didn't prep me for that question.
I know. I mean,
I don't. I have no idea. No idea.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? Okay, I do have an idea. You got me. I don't like being on camera. I don't like doing this kind of thing. But I do have a concept that I wrote down a while ago, but I just don't know if I really want to do it or if I could pull it off. But I did think about going on the road and exploring all the small independent music scenes, and kind of an Anthony Bourdain type thing. Instead of food and drink, it's more about local independent music scenes. The underground, the stuff that I'm interested in. Obviously, not going to go discover stuff I don't want to discover. But
sure, because you've been doing the magazine for a while, right? So maybe a book of some sort, a little coffee table book of your adventures. And
I actually thought about turning the magazine into a coffee table book, but more of a quarterly publication that's a little like on nicer paper with better photos, but doing that like as a quarterly type thing. Mm-hmm. It's just real expensive to do something like that. I'd have to find some funding for it.
Yeah.
As far as a book, the only idea I have for a book right now is one, possibly the history of Respectable Street, 33 years, all the stuff that's transpired over 33 years. That could be cool to be a part of a project like that.
Yeah. Now, one of the more local bands who gained popularity over the years, and especially the singer Chris Carrabba, Further Seems Forever. Any memories of their early shows and maybe working with them at that time?
Well, I think there's one show at Respectable Street. I don't think I was the primary booker on it. I helped promote it. And I do remember after the show, I was talking with Chris, and I was really impressed with his vocals that night. It was just something like I hadn't heard before. He's got a great throat, but maybe the sound that night was especially good as well. But we chatted after the show, and I'm like, that was amazing. And he kind of let me know that he was about to do some solo stuff, but I was like, yeah, whatever. Didn't pay attention to it so much, and then I started seeing what he was doing, and I would check out some shows. I didn't book him at that point, but I would go to some of the shows, and everyone's sitting on the ground singing along like they're in church, and I'm just like, biggest goosebumps I've ever had in my life. Something's going on here, you know. And so I was talking to him. He had just released his first single, his first EP, and I was like, hey, I've been doing the radio show. Do you want to, tape something with me? We'll do like a live taping from my apartment, invite like 20 people to come over, and then just post it up on the internet, because there was no internet radio at that point. But he said, yeah, let's do it. And I just kind of let it slide. And then like 2 weeks later, he was on the cover of Rolling Stone. And I'm like, I had no idea any of that was happening behind the scenes. But I think it would have been kind of cool to have like a taping in that kind of a setting just before he, explodes like that across the country.
Yeah. How cool is that?
It would have been cool.
I mean, it happened though. I mean, you were there and everything,
It could happen.
Yeah.
I did book Further Seems Forever. They did a reunion show when I was running propaganda, and we did a secret show with Further, and we were well over capacity for that as well. And that was crazy. His parents were in the back sweating, and I think the AC was broken. It was awful. I mean, it was a great show, but it was awful.
We've had some conversations, off the air, so to speak. And, there's some really good stories that you have that I think listeners would really appreciate. And one of the ones that comes out to me, the story that is interesting, because I didn't know it was even a thing, like it was going on, was when Cheap Trick played Respectable Street.
They were sponsored by a Marlboro promotion, and I booked it, and we weren't allowed to tell anybody who the band was. So we just promoted that this show is happening. It's a secret Marlboro event, whatever. And Cheap Trick got there, set up, got ready to play, and no one showed up. So they ended up playing to about 20 people, maybe 30. His son was there, which is kind of cool. His son was probably about 5 at the time, and they weren't happy at all. But Cheap Trick played Respectable Street for about 20 people.
Wow!
Because we weren't allowed to tell anybody about it, which I thought was stupid, because I knew that I had a feeling that might happen.
Yeah, that's
not my problem.
Not the brightest idea, I would say, but
they smoke cigarettes, not the brightest, whatever.
Well, I guess if you were there, you were one of the lucky ones to see something like that. So
it was cool.
That is very cool. And how did you bring in Jello Biafra? Because I know he played at Respectables, I want to say. I believe he did.
Yeah, he didn't play. It was actually a spoken word thing.
Oh, gotcha.
I think, I'm not sure what agency that was. I feel like it may have been the Cork agency, but I'm not sure. That goes way back. Yeah, that was cool. I got to ride around with him for the day. Took him to record shops and took him to get some coffee, get some snacks. He was a character. I don't fanboy it when I'm hanging out with people like that, but it was pretty cool to have that experience. Yeah. Took him to Soundsplash over on Georgia.
Nice.
Out there for a while.
Do you remember what he bought record wise?
No. That's the thing about the diary thing, Like, if I could tell me to go back and keep a diary, it would have been cool to keep a diary.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Something else I also wanted to ask you, because this name comes up a bit. It came up in my last interview with Paige Harvey's. I know she had known them from back in the day, and he's in the news, not for good reasons, as we all know. But Marilyn Manson, did you ever have any run-ins with him and maybe anyone else in the band in all the years you were putting on shows and also playing shows and some of the bands you were in?
Yeah, I mean, I saw them a few times, and I had some interactions with him. When they were still Spooky Kids, they were actually really, 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 really good. It was just raw. It was real. There was something going on. You didn't know quite what was going on. It was a little dangerous. But then once they dropped the Spooky Kids and he got signed, did the whole Trent Reznor thing, it just became a formula, obviously. It just became, just a watered down version of what they were, that cool, dirty thing that was happening underground when they started out. And I ran into him. I would hear their songs on KPX.
Yeah, Piper High School, WKPX 88.5. Yeah, I love that.
See, that station also, man, they turned us on to so many cool things back then. And the DJs were great. And then, 4 or 5 years later, they started letting just anybody DJ, and they would just spin whatever mainstream garbage was out there. And it just lost its cachet. I mean, what they were doing in the beginning was like, you actually discovered some really cool stuff. And then everybody thought they were a DJ at some point. And so I ran into Brian in Boca at the Peaches Records and Tapes shop. He had his stripy long johns on, and he was stocking shelves. And I went up and talked to him. I'm like, hey, I do this little radio show up in West Palm. And he's like, cool. And we chatted for a little while. And then about 3 or 4 months later, I ran into him. I was going to see a show at the Ambassador Bar and walked in the door, and sitting right at the door, watching people walk in. He's like, hey, what's up, Steve? And I'm like, who remembers people's names like that? I know I was dressed differently and I had a hat on or something. So I know it definitely left a mark on me, because I don't expect people to remember my name. And that kind of impressed me. So I knew he's kind of a smart dude in certain respects.
Sure. Pays attention to some of those things.
We did help him carry his amp off stage when he played a show in Del Rey.
Okay.
At this mafia-run space called Symbols. And he had relieved himself in the corner of the stage at the end of the show. Not cool.
No, not cool at all, actually.
Your wife will appreciate that one, right?
Yeah. It's been awesome chatting. This has been fun. This has been a lot of fun and really wonderful to hear so many of the stories. And I know there are likely others that maybe one day they'll be out there for the world to know. But until then, we have these to cherish. And you left some really good ones.
Yeah, thank you for doing what you do, but also jogging my memory and forcing me to face my past. And it's just a lot there, and I need to go back and do some inventory on my life and figure out where I've been and where I'm going. Yeah. But this has been an exercise in futility, because there's just too much to digest. And I've had maybe 2 weeks to prep for this a little bit, and just going through all those boxes, and it's just too much.
Yeah, it's a lot.
If you're ever down here and you want to dig through my stuff, have at it.
Oh, I will certainly take you up on that. There's no doubt.
Why don't you come down for Bumblefest?
I don't know if I can get down there at that time. I will be back at some point. I definitely will be. And but it's just awesome to hear and to get a chance. This is the first time you've done a podcast. It's just been really wonderful to hear your stories and things you've done. You have really accomplished quite a bit in what all the years, 30 years.
It's 29.
30 sounds better, Steve.
And 30.
And any closing remarks on Bumblefest coming up in September?
It's going to be a fun one. I have no remarks other than tickets are going fast, and it's limited capacity, especially due to COVID. So I'm trying to tell the bands, like, if they want their friends and family, make sure you let them know to buy the tickets. The headliners this year are Unwed Sailor and Surfer Blood, and then a couple bands from around the state are coming through. Spirit and the Cosmic Heart. Spirit and the Cosmic Heart are amazing. Room 13, they're coming back. I had probably booked them 5 years ago, and they're finally coming back, so that's cool. The Doers hooked me up with that. Hyperluxo had to cancel. Foyer Red canceled, and Kolozanka. She just got signed to Bar None Records. She had to cancel also. They didn't want to travel during the COVID thing.
I got you. With all the work that you do putting this on, do you get a chance to enjoy it at all?
Oh, I make sure I enjoy it. Yeah.
Okay, good.
I try to at least see, like 1 or 2 songs from every single band. This year it'll be a lot easier because I have less stages to deal with. But I think I missed 2 bands last 2 years ago when we did it. 2020 was canceled, obviously, but
right.
I definitely get to enjoy some of it.
Good. That's good. Awesome.
I mean, that's why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I want to see this stuff. I want to see it happen.
Sure. Any new music that you're working on?
No, I'm trying to get Chris from Sweet Bronco to complete the final mixes of the Lightning stuff. Lightnings is a band that we started in 2012, I think, and it ended in 2012. We almost played 1 show, and the recordings are out there, but it's never been released. So that's like almost 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And that's John Ralston, Dan Bonebreak, Steve Copoletti, Chris Horgan, and myself. And they're all amazing, amazing musicians. And I'm just, they just let me jump in, have some fun. It was a good time.
Yeah.
It's just a shame the record doesn't come out because it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear it.
That's great. That's awesome. And I'm going to let you kind of close out the interview. So anything else you wanted to add, share, anything you wanted to plug, I will turn it over to you to close us out.
Too many people like thank. I mean, I am definitely thankful to everybody that's come to the shows over the years, the bands that have played the shows, the ones that don't hassle me too much, especially the ones that are easy to work with, because putting on shows is a pain in the butt, and I don't think a lot of people understand, what goes into it. But some bands are easier to work with than others, and anyway, I do appreciate everyone that I've been able to work with over the years. The other promoters, that we share some information from time to time, share some shows. All the record shops that keep doing what they do. I miss working at record shops, trying to get Russ and Wax to hire me 1 day a week. 1 day a week. I just want 1 day a week. I miss hanging out in the record shop and selling records, In fact, so got this hat from Natalie at Radioactive a couple weeks ago, and I got this shirt from Russ and Wax recently. Yeah. But it's good that record shops are actually beginning to thrive again, especially during the pandemic. It seems like they're doing rather well. I got nothing else but thanks, and I appreciate everyone that supports what I've been doing all these years.
Breathless. Respectable